Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let us please stand up for the national anthem Negaraku and Maju Bersama Bank Rakyat.
serta mesra tuju kemajuan pesat. Warga kerja cemerlang, lantas dan ilmu dan nilai. Serahkan amalan yang terus dengan teknologi moden. Mari kita tuju ke harapan dari bank korporasi yang unggul, berasaskan perbankan Islam untuk agama bangsa dan negara. Rahmat dengan iltizam, janganlah lama dan disiplin. Jayakan anggota dan pelanggan, maju bersama bank rakyat. Maju bersama bank rakyat. Maju bersama bank rakyat.
Thank you. Please be seated. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Miss Marcela Suazo, United Nations Population Fund Representative in Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Dato' Rosman Muhammad, Acting Managing Director of Bank Rakyat, the Board of Directors of Bank Rakyat, the Sharia Committee of Bank Rakyat, the Management Committee of Bank Rakyat, the Sustainability Enabler Group of Bank Rakyat, ladies and gentlemen. Our monthly sustainability talk has now been renamed to our Sustainable Planet series to better capture the ownership and shared responsibility towards our planet through sustainable development. For the past two speakers, they have provided us with an overview of the concept of sustainability. In the last session with Stefan Prisner, a question was raised on the composition of women and in general, gender equality in the workforce. And so we have curated today's talk to be on that very important topic. For that, we extend our utmost gratitude to our speaker, Ms. Marcela Suazo of UNFPA, for her time to be here today. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to begin, let us grace today's talk with a recital of Dua by Ustaz Abdul Hakim Abdul Rahman.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأحوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها من جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات اللهم إنا نستحفظك ونستودعك ديننا وإيماننا وأنفسنا وأموالنا وأهلنا وأولادنا ومعاملنا وشركتنا وكل شيء أعطيتنا اللهم جملنا بالعافية والسلامة وحققنا بالتقوى والاستقامة وأعذنا من موجبات الندامة في الحال والمال إنك سميع الدعاء اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ولوالدينا ولإخواننا ولأحبابنا ولمن كان له حق علينا ولجميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. O Allah, we beg you of all good things which pertains to this day and days hereafter, and seek your protection from all evil which pertains to this day and days hereafter. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن ونعوذ بك من العجز والكسل ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. O Allah, you are peace, and all peace is from you, and all peace returns to you. O Master of power and glory, in conjunction of the building a shared future of Bank Rakyat Sustainability Talk 2019, guide us among those whom you guide. Grant us health and pardon among those whom you grant health and pardon. Fulfill our wish and objective that this event accomplishes success and excellency for us, both on world and hereafter. اللهم أنزل الرحمة والسلامة والربحة على شركتنا واجعل اللهم لها آمنة مطمئنة ناجحة رقية دائمة أبدا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. تقبل الله منا ومنكم.
Thank you, Ustaz. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we would like to invite Yang Berbahagia Dato' Rosman Muhammad, Acting Managing Director of Bank Rakyat, to deliver his Tone from the Top opening address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Ashrafil Anbiya al-Mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And a very good afternoon. Slow macam ni macam mana? Macam mana kita nak sustain? You know, we're talking about sustainability. One more time. Good afternoon. Then can we just do this? Yang ke belakang tu datang ke depan please. Cantik sikitlah kursi ni nampak penuh Ni yang tengah-tengah ni, please. Let's do that. Can we do that now? Ni yang tengah-tengah ni. Kawan-kawan mawa tu datang ke depan ni. I just want to make sure that the chairs are being filled. Please, All right, Puan Marcela Suazo. Over here, Puan means that's our language. Since you say Honduras is just like Malaysia, so Puans mean madam, Marcela Suazo. And we have one of our board member here, Haji Rani, thank you, sir, for coming. My fellow colleagues from the management. Ms. Marcela Suazo is from United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA Malaysia rep over here. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, and thank you for being here. First and foremost, all praises be to Allah, by whose grace and blessings we are gathered here today at our monthly Sustainable Planet series at Menara Kembar Bank Rakyat. It is a great honor for us to welcome Ms. Marcela Suazo. Thank you for coming. The UNFPA Malaysia Rep and Country Director for UNFPA Thailand to our Bank Rakyat to address the topic of gender equality. I'm sure it will be an interesting topic for some of the people in this room. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the era of sustainable development, it is important for us to have a nation that is inclusive, equitable, a country in which no one will be left behind and opportunities will be made available for all. Without the role and contribution of women, the nation will not able to progress to where it is today. It is vital for everyone to respect the contribution of women in all areas, be it economy, social, politics, and cultural. The positive news is that across the country, women are making positive gains day by day. There is indeed a very strong global movement for women empowerment and gender equality. According to the research by Bloomberg, banks in Malaysia have the highest board representation for women across the Southeast Asian region, i.e. more than 30%, outpacing peers in Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand. Give ourselves a big hand. At Bank Rakyat, we are proud to have our chairman, Datuk Noripah Kamso. By the way, Datuk Noripah is not here, dia kirim salam, who could not be here with us today. Datuk Noripah has been an inspiration to us since she was appointed as a bank's chairman in December 2018. Thus, it is no surprise to us that she was chosen as the most influential woman in Islamic business and finance at the Women Awards 2019. Not to forget, we also have Datuk Wan Suraya Wan Muhammad Razi, Secretary General Ministry Entrepreneur Development, as one of our board of directors. You used to have many more women at the board level, and I'm sure in years to come, we're going to have more and more women. On top of that, at Bank Rakyat, we endeavor to promote diversity in terms of gender, as we firmly believe embracing diversity will increase productivity. As of 2019, 43% of our total employees are women. Not only that, 27% of the managerial positions consist of women, which is a progress from 24% from just 2 years ago. We also intend to provide more opportunities for women in the coming years. So men, please get ready for these changes. In terms of the benefits, we offer our female employees with 90 days of maternity leave, as we believe providing good maternity leave will benefit our employees to ensure that they are mentally and physically prepared when they come back to work. So for those yang dah tak ada lagi, tak adalah 90 days. The bank wants to create a workplace where individuals can thrive and feel able to be themselves. We recognize that inclusion is a choice that needs to be consciously reinforced to become part of our culture. It requires an ongoing focus, leading by example, challenging non-inclusive behaviors, and letting others feel comfortable to also challenge these behaviors. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the bank is committed in championing a better gender balance to ensure that the bank is recognized as an employer of choice and as a place which encourages engagement from different groups in society. We have made progress but recognize that there is much more to do. We know that advancing gender diversity and wider inclusion requires a cultural change and that this takes time, but we can say that we have started the journey. With that in mind, I hope you will open your minds and pay close attention to the talk by Marcela Suazo. I hope her talk will be an illuminating one for all of us and spark some inspiration for change in all of us, and also in line with our BR25. Okay, in years to come, these are all the changes that are going to happen at the bank. With that, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Before we call upon our speaker today, a brief background of Ms. Suazo. Prior to joining UNFPA, Ms. Suazo served as Secretary of State for the National Institute of Women's Affairs in Honduras. Ms. Suazo comes to UNFPA with an academic background in education and skills in advocacy, policy dialogue, partnerships, and management. We are pleased to welcome Ms. Suazo to the stage.
I will use my probably only 2 words that I know in Malay, Salam Alaikum. And I would really want to apologize because I really wish I could express myself today in your language. I am honored to be here with you. I thank you for the invitation. Particularly, I would like to salute Dr. Rosman Mohammed, to whom I just met. We have been talking for a little while about this aspiration of the bank of really strengthening the policies and broadening the capacities of the bank for different genders' participation in development of the bank. I would also like to salute, I know she's not here, Datuk Noripa Kamso. And I think it is very interesting to see that for the second time, you have a woman as the chair. I will want to thank also the members of the board that are here and all of the representatives of the different groups of the bank, the group that invited me, the Sustainable Development Group, and also each of you that devote every day of your life to make this bank grow, but also to make Malaysia proud. I would like to say that in the presentation today, we're going to walk a little bit towards what is gender equality? What are these international commitments or the international framework for gender equality? How are we looking at it from the Sustainable Development Goals? Why do we talk about gender equality and particularly women's empowerment for gender equality achievement? And then we're going to see a little bit how and where are women in the world? How does it make a difference if they participate in the economy or not? Also, how is Malaysia doing? Just a little snapshot. Then I have one slide that probably is not correct according to what I just heard, but about the data that we got from the bank riot. And then a little bit, in closure on what are the gaps, what are the areas in which we could work together to advance this. So, should I use this one? How should I do? There you go. First of all, what is gender equality? Does it mean that men and women are equal? No. It doesn't mean that they are equal. When I was a minister, I went to a town to meet some women in the rural area. They are very poor, very poor. And they were sitting, and I, as an authority in the country, they were just quiet, and they were looking and listening to me. And at the end, I didn't know if they had understood what gender equality meant. And one of them, when I asked the question, if you were to explain to me what is gender equality, what do you think, how would you explain it to me? And one of them, she said, well, I think I can explain it. If you get, she said, this glass of water, and you put it here, and you have 2 animals that are going to drink from that same cup, both animals will have the same amount of water to drink. But if you put a little bird, the bird will have a lot of water to drink. And if you put on the side an elephant, the water for this elephant will be insufficient, and they will not be able to drink from a cup. So when we talk about gender equality, we need to have in our mind that we are not talking about men and women being equal, but men and women having capacities that are different, needs that are differentiated, which is not necessarily different, but differentiated, but that they should have access to the same kind of opportunities and to the same kind of benefits from the work that they do and from the role in the society. So in the world, the countries, because these challenges are across the world. It seems like around World War II, many men had gone to war, and they needed mass production of weapons because the war needed to continue. But many of these men were outside, and women had stayed behind taking care of their children. So they said it is important that we bring the women into the production force. And the World War was finalized because all of these women went to the production lanes, and they were able to produce enough so that peace and stabilization could come to the world. I don't know if the war or the result was good or bad, but I know that the women played a role that made a difference in the world. When they were requested to go out to the labor force, they did what they had to do, and they stood up for their nations. So there was a lot of discussions about this, and there was a request to talk about women's labor rights. Because at the time, and I don't know if you know that every 8th of March, there is the celebration or the commemoration of the International Women's Day. And it's celebrated in the 8th of March because that time, in 1912, there were some women working at a factory, and they requested the owner that they needed to work less time, and they were requesting that to only work 16 hours. So the owner of the factory was not agreeable to that. Remember that at that time, women and children were the ones working in factories. Because he was so angry, he locked the factory, he put it on fire, and all of these women died in there. But when the men and women went to request for the labor rights, which is the 1st of May, what has happened? Is the International Day of Labor. So these are the differences. So the conversation around the world said, how can we sit down and can we get agreements on what are the things that women feel that will make this difference and establish this balance? So they did, 40 years ago, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is called the CEDAW. And this is a first charter of women's rights that the United Nations and the member states, including Malaysia, adopted many years ago. And then there were others. This year, the International Conference on Population and Development, for example, is 25 years. And also next year, the Beijing Declaration for Women's Rights will be 25 years. But in a few years back, a couple of years back, in 2015, the presidents of the world, they agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals, that I guess you already know about all of them because you have been receiving. And the goal number 5 is on gender equality. And this is what countries around the world have committed to advance and to ensure that they comply with. And one of them, we are continuing to talk about ending discriminations against women and girls. And this was already signed 40 years ago. So sometimes we ask ourselves, 40 years have passed. What are the things that have changed in terms of discrimination against women and girls? And what are the things that are meaningful that we could change today to ensure that discrimination is not only when we discriminate, but when the person feels that she's less valued or he is less valued. That's when discrimination comes. So what are the things that we can do so that everyone feels value? The other ones are, of course, eliminate the violence against women and girls, eliminate harmful practices such as child marriage. And the reason why the countries around the world selected child marriage is because there's enough studies that say that when a child marries too young, her body is not biologically developed to exercise the duties of a marriage. On the other side, her mind, she's not empowered enough, and she doesn't have enough strength to stand up for violence. So when we have a girl that marries very young, we put her immediately at risk of receiving violence and at risk of not developing to her full capacities. So this is one of the issues why. Recognize and value unpaid and domestic care work. Many women that work, what has happened is that they acquire two jobs. They keep the job at the house, which is not paid, and the paid should be that they should be happy because their children are healthy, which any mother would be happy for having healthy children. But I hope that the parents are also happy, the fathers are also happy for having healthy children. So the recognition, and not only the recognition, sharing the workload in the house, particularly as these new couples that face the realities of today, what's going to happen to the young people today in Malaysia and in many parts of the world is very difficult. Young people today, you are going to be facing two of the most or the major changes in the world at the same time. These are exponential changes, and I'm not sure we are all of it prepared. One of them is the Industrial Revolution. Just before I came here, I was looking at and analyzing and reading some studies on what's going to happen in 20 years and in 30 years, and where are the jobs going to be with this new artificial intelligence. Development with artificial intelligence will not be linear. It will be exponential. So I'm not sure we think linearly. When we go to school, they teach us to think linearly. So now it will be exponential. So young people will have to transfer your capacities, your skills, into becoming these kind of exponential thinkers to be able to participate and to compete in the markets and to bring development to your countries and economic growth. But on the other hand, you're going to face aging. This country is going to age in 30 years, 30, the same amount in time that it took Europe 100 years to grow. That means that Europe had 100 years to prepare for their aging time, and you have 30 years. That means that the young people today and the investments that you have to do in the young people today need to do those two things to prepare them for the Industrial Revolution in Malaysia, if Malaysia would like to continue to be a leading source of growth and economic competence in the world and in the market. But also, you will need to ensure that that person produces by 2 or by 3 so that you can have enough savings so that they can sustain some of us that are here that will be aged already, and they will have to pay for our bills. So these are some of the things UNFPA has worked in this area for more than 30 years because initially we started in support of the institutions of statistics and the censuses. And our main work was to analyze the population dynamics and where, how many children, and then what were the demands of development, and where was the stress of the population being placed. This is why we analyze what's happening with aging and what's happening with the young people. But then we realized in 1994 that if we don't see development from the eyes of the human being, then we may fail when we define the policies. And this is why now we work on gender equality to ensure that women raise this gap and are able to be part of the force of the countries at the same level, but also what's happening with sexual and reproductive health, which means what is happening, how many children are being born, what are the opportunities for people to decide on the children that they want to have, how many children are being born to people that cannot take care of them, for example, baby dumping, and all of this, so that the country is prepared of what's happening. Because if we don't talk about this, it's not going to disappear. It's going to grow. When you don't touch a situation, it can become a problem if you don't address it. So these are the commitments that Malaysia has already approved. And in the CEDAW, there's two of them: elimination of discrimination in education, including access to information on health and family planning. And this is something that the CEDAW committee has told that we need to strengthen in this country. And the other challenge is the elimination of the discrimination in healthcare. So the SDG around the world, this one. Am I doing it or somebody's doing it for me? It's just that. Okay, the SDG, Women in Leadership. Here you see that one of the areas that could make a difference in a country is how many women are in politics. Why do we talk about politics? Because the political parties and the political appointments gives you the opportunity to make policy decisions. And a man and a woman understand the world around them differently, because we usually come from our experience, and then we look for solutions to those things that our eyes are looking. And traditionally, our eyes have been set in different places. So how do we unite the eyes of a woman and the eyes of a man so that we can really bring policies that are integrated, that respect both of them, and that provide a glass that is good enough for the bird and good enough for the elephant? So we see that in the world, from the year 2000 to the year 2017, there has been an increase, this is around the world, from 13%, almost underrepresentation, to 23.4%. The investigations say that we should have no less than 30% of either gender in order to ensure that the voices are kind of balanced. But many countries have established quotas of 40% and 50% of representation. 39% of the countries worldwide use these kinds of quotas, and they call it positive discrimination. And this is only to push and to ensure that the gap is going to be bridged. But this is one that probably interests the bank. Only 1 out of every 3 managers are women in the world. This was done, this is a study done by the UN, so on the SDG 5 reports. So from all of the reports, only 1 of every 3 are in middle and senior positions of management, and 47% of people in business, men and women in business, say that they are in favor of gender quotas in the corporate boards. But what we see today is that participation in the boards, participation of women in the board is very limited and sometimes even non-existent. So in this one, for example, these are questions that I don't know if we are outside of the house all day, do we know the answers? Who planned and prepared the meals for your family? How long did you walk today to fetch the water? In Honduras, when I was a minister, I did a study, and we found out that in the poor areas, a woman, when she ate, she consumed around 1,200 calories a day. But she spends 700 calories. That means half of the calories of her intake in bringing water from the river to the house, carrying this water. I don't know, probably many of you have been born in cities where the water already comes, but maybe some of you have seen or lived at a time where we had to go and carry the water to the houses. And this takes a lot of your strength. And women were doing this with children. So this we did to convince a bank to please bring, they were financing a road, and we wanted to convince them to also bring the water to the city, to this small village, so that women didn't have to go and carry. These are the things that when the banks, if you are receiving a project that the bank is going to finance, these are the small things that you can check around these investments that the bank is going to be making to see if it is close to a place where they don't have a health center, where they don't have a daycare, for example. There are many women working around where they're going to build this new business, but there's not a daycare center. So that the bank can also counter-propose and say, could you include this? Would it be possible that you include these other things? And also, one of the things is that because when there was that war, women, when it was an emergency, women did not negotiate with the men what's going to happen with the workload of the house. So they just went out to work. And they are allowed to go to work if they continue having the workload in the house. They take care of the children, they take care of the meals, they take care of the clothes, they take care of the homeworks, they take care of the parties, they take care of the sports that the children go to, the music classes, the going to the prayers, the going to say hello to the grandparents, the keeping a well-being, well-dressed, that going to the doctor, brushing their teeth, and so forth, so on. That is another 12 hours of work, plus the work that they do here, plus there's another work. Women also have families. And who takes care of the mother and the father, that they don't live there, that they left outside, and not only their parents, the in-laws. Oops, I fell in love with this man, but now I need to care also for all his family. So women work 3 times, many times. That is if they are not heads of household that need to get 2 jobs in order to get 1 salary. So these are the differences that we're talking about. The systemic constraints, and this is something that I wanted to put here, because this is something that you can review in the bank. Adverse social norms. What is the social norm? Do we know what the women want? They are just quiet because they like the way they are treated or the positions they are using, or they are just quiet because nobody has ever asked them, or they are just quiet because men are louder, or because men have more opportunities to talk among themselves and to devise where they can address the new positions, for example. So what are those social norms? You know, how do we see women and men? Discriminatory laws and gaps in legal protection. And here I found something that was very surprising to me. and is that Malaysia didn't have a sexual harassment law. And I am happy to know that they are working on passing one in the parliament very soon. But what is sexual harassment? And we will see it, in the conversation, but really is many women are not going to work if they are sexually harassed. Usually it's by men, that they are telling them things just, to make them feel that either scared or make them feel that this is not the place for them, so that they go away. So this should be really made a social norm in every workplace, that this is not tolerated. Zero tolerance for sexual harassment should be part of a workplace. This would allow women to feel more comfortable. And sometimes we don't see it if it's ourselves and you don't realize, but if you imagine that that woman is your daughter, or that woman is your mother, or that woman sexually harassed is your wife, then you change. Then you say, I don't want my daughter, I don't want my wife to be treated this way. So we should really talk about this, and we should really do something about this. The failure to recognize, to reduce and redistribute unpaid housework and care, I think I touched on that already. And the gender gaps in access to digital, and this is another area where the bank can do. Digital, financial, and property assets. I'm not sure in Malaysia, really, I don't have the data, but in many countries, when you give a loan to a woman, usually the payback of the loan is 90 to 99% of effectiveness. And when you give it to a man, usually it's between 75 to 85% of repayment. Then you will need to put the mechanisms to follow the people so that they pay back. But women usually go to the place and pay on time. But they are not the owners. They usually do not have access to these financial products and the property assets. Even when they work the land is not theirs. The next one. So women in the world, 50% of women in working age in the labor force are working in the labor force as compared to 77% of men. The wage gap, what happens, or what do we mean when we talk about the gender wage gap? It means that for every dollar that you receive for the same amount of work with the same qualifications, a woman gets only 24 cents less than the dollar. So you're doing the same thing, same amount of work, with the same productivity. The men are paid $1, the women are paid 24 cents less than the dollar. Why? There's not a real reason, but we tend to value the work that women do. This is subconscious many times, but we tend to value it less than the men. Why? Sometimes we feel that the men are the heads of households, and they should be earning more. But we forget that women are doing two or three jobs, and they are not getting any paid for all of those other jobs that they are doing. So at least getting the same amount of money would be fair. But what happens with women that have children? And we have found that in countries that are aging fast, there are pronatalist policies. Everyone is talking that we should have more children being born. But the motherhood pay gap, mothers made 42% less than women without children. So then we ask, why do the young women don't want to have children anymore? Can you imagine what it means to get 42% less? Would you be able to buy a home if you earn 42% less? Would you be able to get a car if you would earn 42% less? Would you be able to get some savings to help your parents if you were getting 42% less? So these are the things that make us think. And when we are talking these changes can be made and can be made by institutions. And I gave this conference, not with the same numbers, for the first time in the World Bank in 2003. And for the first time, the World Bank did two things. They started a new gender policy in the World Bank. This is globally, when I was a minister. And they did something else that was very important. The World Bank, with the governments that they provide funds, they do something that is called the CAS, and that includes the criteria for accessing to the bank's loans. And they establish a criteria for all of the countries, a gender criteria in the CAS. And the last one that I wasn't going to touch, but right now I saw it. 1 in 3 women experience intimate partner violence. And really, this is something else that, of course, the bank cannot do, that is intimate partner violence, but at least could have a policy, could have information, and could have support so that women know where to go and what kinds of support they can get. Hello. I'm finishing. This is a little bit of women in Malaysia and what's happening. And here I'm going to only call you to 2 things in the bottom. Why do women leave the workforce? See? Number 1 is to raise a family. Number 2 is to take care for a family member. And number 3 is because they don't get work-life balance. So they see at a certain point that they need to drop something, and what they drop is the job, because they can decide to put the resignation, but they cannot leave the family, and they cannot forget about caring for a family member. And the other thing is that many other countries like Japan and others, Korea, that are aging, they had a second peak. But Malaysia, it's declining fertility. You will not have probably a second peak of what we call the demographic dividend. You will not have a second peak in which more women and men are in capacity to work because you have less aging and less children, because your fertility rates are declining altogether. And it's not the issue about having more children necessary, but it's the issue of we could have more children. Are we doing what we need? But do we want to have more children if we're going to earn 42% less or other things? So this I already talked about. In Malaysia also, out of 100 ringgits, wages earned by men, a woman receives only 93.80. So it's also in Malaysia. And also the director's position. These are some of the commitments that Malaysia has made and that Malaysia has already advanced, but we see that we still have some challenges that we need to move forward in, like as a country. Initially, I was talking about the policies internally to the bank, but also the country doesn't have, for example, a Gender Equality Act, and it's not even been discussed at this time. This is something very interesting. Equal economic participation by women would add 26% of annual global GDP by 2025. Malaysia would like to become a developed nation. In order to become a developed nation, Malaysia will need to increase their GDP so that they can have a GDP that is comparable to the developed nations of the world. But they have the capacity. They already have so many women that are not working. If they bring them to the labor force, they will add 26% of annual GDP growth. So this was done in 2015 by the McKinsey Global Institute. The other thing is that there are a lot of reports and research that show that the gaps between men and females in the rural area, in the production arena, in terms of access to the land, access to credit, access to technologies, and access to markets. So this is another difference that the bank could make. I'm not sure if you are already doing, but if you could open up markets for the produce of women that you certify and that you mobilize and that you support the marketing of it, this could probably also help not only the outside, but it could also help the bank, because these women could probably get the loans from the bank, and you could unite the production to support. So there are many ways in which women can still participate, not only by working in institutions. And again, it is shown, but I'm going to tell you one more thing. I'm sorry that didn't tell me until what time I have. It's 4:05. What time should I finish? 5 more minutes. Okay. One is that the McKinsey Institute, it says the power of parity in 2018, in the best scenario, 4.5 trillion of additional annual GDP, or 12%, could be added to the economies of Asia Pacific by 2025 if we put women into the labor force. But in a report that I saw from Harvard University, if you put 80,000 women into the labor force, you should increase 1% of your GDP by each 80,000 women. But Malaysia, in the past, I think 5 years, put 270,000 women into the labor force, but only increased 0.3% of GDP. What happens? You involve in or included into the labor force 3 or 4 more times of women, but they are less paid. If the impact in the GDP, instead of being 1% of the GDP, was only 0.3%. So, analyzing these things by the banks would really be important. And then, this one says that Malaysia could win 25% of their GDP. That means that your gender gap right now is about 25% of your GDP. If you invest in bringing the women into the labor force, then you could grow 25% of your GDP by 2030. Oops. Hello. Okay, and I'm going to end. The 7 primary drivers of women's economic empowerment. You have the... Okay, thank you. But I promise I will finish before, if you want to have it, Yes, we can have more dialogue. This one is interesting because this one can show you what are the primary drivers. And these, you have the presentation. I have facilitated this presentation. So you can see this one, and you can see how you can tackle some of these when you and if you would like to work on your gender policy, gender equality policy for the bank. And we could also support if you would like to go this way. This is the bank riot. Where are you? There. How are women here in this bank? So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to look at it. But basically, what caught my attention, what caught my eye, is that there's basically no change. A little bit up, a little bit down, but there's basically no change anywhere. The numbers remain static around the different years. So I think this can also call the attention for you to see where we are and who we can work with and what are the kinds of policies that we could put in place. And I had already mentioned sexual harassment. You have there a definition of what sexual harassment is, and I will allow myself to read it to you. It is a form of violence and a violation and abuse of human rights, likely to result in physical, psychological, sexual, economic, or social harm or suffering, encompasses a continuum of unacceptable and unwelcome behavior and practices of a sexual nature that may include, but are not limited to, sexual suggestions or demands, request of sexual favors, verbal or physical conduct or gestures that are or might reasonably be perceived by the person who receives it as offensive or humiliating. This is what sexual harassment is. There is also harassment without being sexual harassment. It's putting them down, not taking their ideas forward, instructing them to be quiet, instructing not in a good way, but humiliation. When humiliation is there and harming of their inner selves, for men and for women, but this is harassment. But what we are talking particularly is to pay attention to sexual harassment, because this we have found that is really a big reason why women want or don't feel comfortable into moving forward in their careers. And usually this is not reported. And particularly where there is a workplace where the men have to make this decision and they have to go tell this to a men that are superior or that have more power than them. Usually they prefer to be quiet because they need the job, they need the pay because they need to feed their children at home, and they know that if they say something, nobody's going to believe, or they're going to agree among themselves, and she is most probably the one who's going to lose not only her job, but also her reputation among her colleagues, men and women, and will create a problem in the family. So that many times I stay quiet. And this is like having a hostage. So it's important that probably, I'm not sure if this is what everybody wanted to hear, but this is what it really is. And it is happening. I have met here with different people. Some of them have gone into the paper, into the news, but we have met and it is happening, but it is kept quiet. So one of the things that we can do is that if you see that this is happening, whether you are a woman or a man, if your colleague is doing this to somebody and you realize this, raise it immediately. And the board, I hope that the board will have the ears open so that this could be taken, seriously when something is happening. This is the only way that you will be able to avoid it if something is done. So what did we learn today? We learned about gender equality is a human right. It's something that we would like for ourselves, respect for ourselves, the same way we would like for our daughters, the same way we would like for our mothers, the same way we would like for our sisters. So it's just a human right when we talk about gender equality. It recognizes that we are not the same, that we are different, but that we have qualities and capacities that put together can really bring good things forward. That Malaysia is committed internationally to gender equality. Malaysia is a member state that is signatory of the international agreements. That gender equality is good for growth, good for investment, and good for the business, and that it will be necessary, and it will be good also for entering the 4.0 industrial revolution and what's coming for the region. And that the policies that directly support women are important for the reasons we discussed. So terima kasih. And I am here for your questions also.
Thank you, Ms. Suazo. Now we shall open the floor for the Q&A.
Everything was very clear, or nothing was clear? Can I get a pen? It's also okay. I can talk from here. Thank you. Thank you. There are so many questions that I wanted to write. Well, maybe I can ask a question. Does the bank has a policy? A gender equality policy? Do you already have one? No. It's part of your sustainability. You have a sexual harassment policy. This is very good. Maybe we could use as an example. Do you find in your rotation that men tend to stay more in Bank Raya than women, or basically they stay the same number of years? There's not a difference. Same number of years. Until retirement. So this is good. Finally, one question. Thank you so much.
Hi, Ms. Marcela. I would like to ask, well, for now, you'll be happy to know that Bank Rakyat is actually the first Malaysian bank to offer a credit card exclusively for women. So it is called the Muslimah credit card. And as a bank that continuously strives to champion socio-economic development of the suppressed, oppressed, and repressed, how do we encourage and empower female entrepreneurs?
Can you repeat the question, please? I heard about the credit card, and then?
Yeah, actually we are the first bank to have a Muslimah
Yes.
credit card offered to women only.
Yes.
So as a bank that continuously strives to champion socio-economic development
Yes.
of the suppressed, oppressed, and repressed, actually how do we encourage and empower female entrepreneurs?
I thank you very much for your question, and I have two answers for you. Number one is that I am very interested in learning about this Muslim credit card, because I think when we were talking about South-South cooperation, this could be probably an example that we could get from a private sector. You know, this not a public sector, but a private sector, which could be very useful. On the other hand, it will be very important to analyze why women are not accessing to these credits to become entrepreneurs. And sometimes it's because the banks request, in other countries, it's because the banks request something of their ownership that they need to give to the bank to support, you know, the payback of the loan. And sometimes they don't have anything under their name that they can bring to the bank and get this loan. The other thing sometimes also is because if they don't have the support of the business, because maybe they can do, you know, the product, but they don't know how to establish a business, how to market their products. And this is what I was saying at the beginning. Maybe the bank would like to open an integrated approach to new entrepreneurs. And if you would like, for example, young women, and place this kind of support so that they can not only develop their program, but that they learn with the bank also how to establish new markets and to establish new positions. And if you can do it online, because I read the report of ASEAN, and 90% of all of the new jobs that are going to be created in the future in this region are related to online technologies. I'm not sure if I addressed correctly your question.
Hi, Madam Marcela. My name is Shima. Okay, I would like to draw your attention on one statement that you said just now. So, most of women do not want to pursue their career due to this sexual harassment. Yeah, and I'm not sure about here, but I don't feel that is one of the issue that we do not want to pursue our career. And another, or probably because there's not much opportunity for us women, yeah. And secondly, about the stigma, saying that women's leader is a little bit more emotional compared to men. So what is your view on that? Thanks.
One thing is that in certain countries, sexual harassment might become one of the reasons why they don't or they prefer not to continue upscaling their careers. And I am happy to hear that this is not the case here, but it's about opportunities. They need to feel secure and they need to feel that they have equal opportunities to have that access. And I think this is what it's gender equality, you know, the same kind of opportunities. In terms of the second thing, and it is very true, and the first thing that when I was a minister, and also when I was a director for the whole region of the United Nations, talking to some of my representatives that were reported to me, sometimes they would say, and I would ask, but what do you think is the problem in that office? And he said, too many emotional women. And that is a very discriminatory statement. You know, men have also a lot of emotions. But the way that we are raised is that men need to drink their emotions. They cannot express their emotions because emotions are perceived in the role of men as being weak. So when they are little, the men tell their children, don't cry, you're a man. You need to be strong, you're a man. So the society, and if you see a boy, 9 years old, coming, mommy, something happened to me. Oh, what happened to this crybaby? So society, we are pushing men to hold their emotions. But then we want them to be emotional to their children. We want them to show love to their children. We want them to show love to the wife. But we have pushed them not to show the emotions. But women, on the other hand, traditionally, the roles that we play are related to the emotion. Oh, the beautiful mother, the sweet mother, the sweet woman, the sweet, you know, all of this emotion around it. So these are constructions of roles that then we use when we want to disempower, you know. And I think it is important that both we take, we raise awareness that we shouldn't do that either or. Men have the right to have their emotions. Actually, it is important that men can express their emotions. And it is important that women can express their emotions. But what it is true is how we make decisions. It is true, we do decisions in a different way. This is what I meant when I say women, we see the things one way and men see it another way. And what makes the good outcome is when you have both eyes bringing the vision into what we want to build together. That is, you know, when we want to bring gender equality in action. So thank you very much. I think there are no more questions. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Yes, 2 women and a man. Let's see if I get another man later.
Okay. ¿Cómo está?
Muchas gracias. Muy bien.
Okay. Just want to query about this statistic on wages equality. Almost throughout my career, I hire a lot more women than men. And in all occasions, I did not actually differentiate in terms of salary paid, or probably they get paid higher. So is there more detailed statistic on that?
Well, the statistic they got in my office, I think I can ask them where they got it, but I'm not sure if this is somewhere in your in your website, or there is a place called Talent Corp also where they get information. So somewhere on those, but I can get back to you exactly with what was the source of information.
Because I think in banking probably is not so much an issue. Not sure about it. I just want. Okay. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias.
Sorry, before you leave, Ms. Marcela, I have a question.
Yes.
Quotas for women pose the risk of being undermined by colleagues. How do we encourage more inclusive representation in senior positions while being careful not to undermine them with quotas?
Yes, you are right, and that is a debate. And you are completely right. There is a debate. There are many women, even women, that feel that they don't want quotas because they want to participate in the same level and they have the same capacities. What has happened in reality, and it's many times not because that is the will, but it's because that is the format or the way it is usually done, or the perception is that if we don't place quotas, or at least if we don't have a policy to raise our awareness, then we will forget. And then we end up with more men than women. Or with more men in decision-making positions and more women in clerk positions. Or we end up with more men in the best-paid jobs and more women in the lower-paid jobs. And this has happened. The other thing is also that many women, they say that they prefer to have shorter, that they want to know at what time they can go. And usually when you get executive positions, you don't have a time to get off work. And they prefer to do that because they have another job at home that usually men do not have that job at home. So being knowledgeable and providing this opportunity, this life-work balance, yes, you can leave, so your KPIs during your children are at home are some, or during vacations, these are times that then you repay 1 hour per week, later part of the year, or, forms that would allow the woman to feel comfortable. Probably are other things. But what I can tell you from my experience, both as a minister and working also with the UN, is that the best thing is to ask, to get together, to have a survey, and to ask what would make the difference. And not only ask the women, ask the men also, so that you learn from each other what are the needs, because also men have needs. And the new generations are different from my generation. Now more and more men are also working in the family, as long as the father-in-law or their own father doesn't see them that they're sweeping. Well, another question? Thank you. So I got 3 men now.
Yeah, good evening, madam. My name is Imran. So I would like to ask your personal views on mandatory paternity leave. Do you think that would affect the female's performance in jobs relating to GDP increment? Like, would that help the female to do better in the workforce? Thank you.
See, I have been a mother a long time ago, but I would say that certainly, yes. I think it will help the paternity leaves and the maternity leaves support both, support the household, support the family, but support the child. There is no other best way to be taken care of than by the mother and the father for a new baby. So if we want healthy babies, the best way to do, if we want healthy families, the best way to do is to allow mother and fathers to take the roles in taking care of their children.
Hello. I just want to hear your opinion. In general, do you know what is affirmative action favoring women?
What is an affirmative action?
Affirmative action, something like positive discrimination of a woman.
Yes.
So, in your opinion, does affirmative action empower women or undermine women itself?
Yes, this question is, thank you very much for this question, because this question is very similar to the question of quota. The quota is an affirmative action. What it means, well, I believe that here at a certain point there is or there was a policy, an affirmative action to ensure that Malay people would have certain kinds of support to bridge gaps that they felt with other people, right? I'm not sure if it's okay, if it's still today or it was at the beginning after your independence. But an affirmative action, the objective of the affirmative action is to place an accelerator so that the gap is bridged faster. So I don't believe that affirmative actions undermine the ones that are receiving it, but as long as they know that once the gap is bridged, then there is equal. This means that you will have established laws, policies, legislation, opportunities, platforms that will allow this equal opportunity, and the affirmative action will not be needed anymore. But I would say it's not necessarily undermining. So quotas, affirmative actions, policies to bridge gaps are not necessarily wrong. And they are used in many ways, not only for gender equality, they are used also to bridge the gap between populations that have less opportunities and populations that have more opportunities, to bridge that gap.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How do you see this gender equality in applicability of it to the Islamic cultures? Take, for example, like certain Middle Eastern country where they don't feel like being discriminated, but the culture itself has already been set. Like, for example, woman does not go to work, that woman does this certain thing. So how does this thing brought into culture?
I really, see, this is my first time in an Islamic country, but in our countries and in my country, what we have is the tradition. The tradition is that women stay back in the house taking care of the children, and the men provides for the home, which is very strong for men. I'm not sure if all men, when they were graduating from university at 2021, what they felt, I will need to make a family and have so many children, and I will need to pay for everything, what they eat, their health, everything. It's a big burden to be, taken care of a family. So I believe that not only because they are Islamic countries, but it happens also abroad. And I go again to the roles that we play. And societies assign roles to women and to men. But these are socially assigned, because at the end, I guess that all of the women, and maybe I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but all of the women probably that are working here bring the paycheck to the house, and they don't use it in buying clothes for them only, but they use it to raise their children. Or I hope I'm wrong. So these roles that are assigned, we tend to follow the roles. The important thing is that we ask them, is this what you really want for yourself? Because if we don't ask them, what's going to happen at a certain point is that we will see that they no longer want to get married, that they no longer want to enter a space in which they feel will limit their possibilities. So I am not sure that this has to do with Islamic a culture or Islamic context or even with a religious belief. I believe that it has to be more with a cultural tradition that is across the world, whether we call it Islamic or we call it the macho. In Latin America, they call it the macho dominant culture, and in other parts of the world, they call it differently. So that would be my perspective. Because nowadays and in the future, if the couple of the family don't work, it will be very difficult to sustain the family and to have all of the children that you want to have. So I was listening to the Deputy Minister of Economic Affairs from Malaysia. And he was telling us in a conference that when he graduated, maybe 20 or 25 years ago that he came back to the country, he was earning, let's say, $2,000. I don't remember exactly the number. And he said that at the time, it allowed him to live a certain way, to buy a small car, And he said today, 20 or 25 years later, the ones that come here, graduated from university, earn exactly the same. But they cannot buy what he could buy 20 or 25 years ago. So what means is that these young people, these young men, if they want to marry and the idea is to have a house and a family, I think both of them will have to work. So it would be very difficult but the most important thing is to ask yourself, or how many men would like to stay in the house and have the wife go outside and bring, be the supporters of the house, and you would like to stay in the house. There are many houses that are like that now in the world today also. And it's not necessarily because they want to, it's because of the opportunities. Households, when you have 2, 3 children, 4 children that you need to feed, if the job that opens is for the wife, the wife goes and works. If the job opens is for the man goes out and work. If the job opens for the two of them, usually the two of them go and work. Because you want to feed them and give them an education and give them a better future of what we consider is a better future. I thought we were going to get another woman's question. Thank you.
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, gracias.
Just a simple question. Is there any part of the world that having a so-called adjacent or different issue? That means in terms of gender equality, instead of providing opportunity to the women, that they have to provide opportunity for the men. Thank you.
Well, that is a very, very good question, and I'm going to study more on that. But New Zealand. New Zealand had many years ago a woman as a prime minister. And after her, there was another woman as a prime minister. And after her, there was another woman as a prime minister. And one of them, in a conference in New York, said that once she went to visit one classroom when she was a prime minister, and this was like the third or fourth woman prime minister. And then they asked the little children if they wanted to ask a question, and there was a little boy that put his hand up, and his question was, can a boy also be a president, or can a boy also be a prime minister? So I think it is important to know that it is important to maintain the balance. This little boy had never seen and never heard of a prime minister who was not a woman, which is not in every country of the world, but it seems New Zealand has this characteristic? But that is a very good question. Now I want to learn more about that. Thank you very much. Well, I think we do not have more questions. I just want to say that I feel very honored to be here, that this is my first time in Asia. I am learning to know Asia through the doors and through the heart of Malaysia and Malaysians, and that I have felt very much welcome in this country, that you have a really beautiful country, that the first thing that amazed me when I came here is that I saw how different people from different ethnic backgrounds, from different religious origins, could live together. And this is a jewel. This doesn't happen in many countries of the world. And I think you should really be recognized for this. And I know that there are challenges, and I know that probably I would say that from my respectful observations, yes, you have a potential in women that you could probably expand in this country, because you already invest in women. So it's the opportunities for using this potential. But that you really have a great nation, and that I feel very honored to be here, and that I thank you for your invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Suazo. With that beautiful note, we have come to the end of the sustainability talk for today. Before we end today's session, we would like to invite our distinguished guests to savor the high tea serving at the Anjong Kembar, while we invite ladies and gentlemen to the foyer for light refreshments. Have a pleasant day. Thank you, and wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.